Elon and Twitter. What's your take?
I don't know his strange alien intentions. Like, Elon's not human, right? Like, you can't do what you do.
Zero wealthy people I know are just sitting on a bunch of like piles and piles of cash, like Scrooge McDuck.
Access to cash is the flex.
Yeah.
Cash is not the flex.
Sure.
I am not joking, Travis. Everything that we own has a rainbow or a unicorn on it. Everything. Last week, we closed on a business. We installed a 6-year-old CEO.
So the lesson is go buy weed in California. What's everybody? Welcome back to Travis Makes Friends. Today I'm sitting down with a longtime friend of the show, Mr. Sharran Srivatsaa. Sharran, what's up, dude? Welcome.
Hey, man. Super excited to be back with you.
Yeah, so if you're watching this, you're listening to this right now, and you want to hear a little bit more about Sharran's background, because it's a fascinating background. Dumpster diving as a kid, crazy kind of rags to riches story, all the way through exiting a company for over $3 billion. Just crazy, crazy stuff in Sharran's background. So if you want to go check that out, episode 252 of the podcast. Remember, if you're a new listener of the show, the old show was called Build Your Network. So when you go back there, don't let that throw you off. It was Build Your Network episode 252, but it's on the same RSS feed. So head back in time and check that episode out, hear a little bit more about Sharran's story. But dude, I'm excited to catch up about everything that's been happening, because last time we talked, I think you were still doing stuff in the real estate space.
Yep.
And now you're with Highland.
Yep.
Right. So can you kind of just catch us up on what happened in the last couple of years and what you're up to right now?
Yeah. So we've had 5 exits in the last 19 years. And once you have a bunch of exits, people realize they only talk about the positive stuff, but you don't realize all the things that you did wrong. And I actually would tell you, and you and I have had offline conversations about the things that we did wrong actually fueled a lot of the other growth. And it's sad that the failures are not showcased in the most positive light. So what I realized was, when I used to see other companies doing things, I would tell them, I'm like, hey, I did this.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend not going down that path. And I saw a few companies that actually took the advice, and they were like, hey, Sharran, so what would it take for you to coach or consult? And I didn't want the coach or consulting route. So we decided to build a private equity firm where we would not be majority partners, but only be minority partners. So our goal was to saying, hey, can we help businesses triple in size, get ready for an exit like we did, but only be minority partners? And so over the last 5 years, we have invested and helped operate as minority partners of close to 24 companies right now. Okay. And all in the services field. And so getting them to connected to the successes that we had, but also to avoid all the failures that we had. Yeah. But staying in the minority partner role has been a super cool thing for me, because that way the founder gets to still drive it. It's their vision. Yeah. But instead of the coach or consulting route, being a partner, the energy is completely changed. Totally.
Yeah. And as a founder, like that type of structure is something that I think a lot of people discount it, man, because like you in your mind, you're like, but this is my baby. I don't want to give up this big chunk of, whatever. And you tell yourself all these negative stories about it. But at the end of the day, it's like, I would way rather have somebody that's going to be shoulder to shoulder with me in the trenches and be there for, like, if we're going on this rocket ship, you're with me. But if we crash and burn, you're also with me. Yeah. And there's something about that energy that's totally different than just like, here's money, now give me advice. Totally. From both angles. Yeah. So, I can definitely appreciate that. I'll
tell you something super interesting, right? Early on, that was the plan. Then I realized that several founders I would talk to saying, well, I built this so far, I'm kind of reluctant to give you a piece of this business, even though I know that you can bring a lot of value. So I changed my model early on where I said, I don't get the equity, even though I write the check, I earn it. And so, meaning we set up very simple benchmarks over a 3-year period as to what we need to hit. And it accrues and vests, but until I hit that benchmark, I don't even earn the equity. So I'm completely in all the way. So it allows me to know that I have risk capital in the game. Sure. But the founders don't feel like Sharran's getting a free ride. Right. And that's been super helpful.
What are you doing in terms of like top of funnel, like awareness around something like this existing? Because like literally, bro, like if you told me this when I was starting a service-based business, I would have been like, where do I sign up? You know what I mean? Like how are you spreading the word? And are you conscious or mindful about like the sheer volume of companies that you bring on, because you obviously can't say yes to everybody?
That's right. So we've continued to build the team to support the growth of the business. However, It's shocking. I have not sent one message, one email, one tweet, one video, not one thing promoting this at all. Not one. The only way people actually find out about this is one of two ways. One way, which you taught me. Second way, which I just started doing. The way you taught me was, hey, you should mention something on your podcast about it. So when somewhere in the podcast, I will tell a story. Hey, I'm working with Travis, one of our partner companies. Let me tell you the story. Hey, by the way, if you're interested in what we're doing, go to highlandprime.com and it'll tell you stories. Literally, there is if you're interested, go check this out. And the second is, there's just a link in bio on Instagram. And so when someone watches content and they find their way to the bio and they actually click on it, we are getting, at this time, it's not a lot, but we're getting a dozen to 2 dozen inbound, fully filled out applications per week.
Wow.
Per week.
That's crazy.
Yeah, with no promotion.
No ad spend,
Nothing.
just pure like organic content.
Yeah.
That's helping people.
Yeah.
They see it. They're like, hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, man. What type of content are you guys putting out? Like, what does your output schedule look like?
Yeah, the output, it's actually super simple. Our goal is to get 3 to 5 pieces a day on TikTok as a testing ground. So we do the same video with 4 different hooks on TikTok.
Same video
with just 4 different hooks, intros, first 5 seconds on TikTok. Whichever performs the best, it goes on Reels. So that's 1 to 2 videos max a day on Reels. The same goes on YouTube Shorts. So 1 to 2 videos a day max, but it's all, hey, here's what I'm doing with the partners. Here's what we're doing with our founders. Just telling the story of kind of documenting what we're doing with them.
If you could snap your fingers and have 1 million engaged followers on one single platform, but it meant that every other platform went to 0, which one would you pick?
I would love to go to YouTube Shorts. I would love for YouTube to just, because I think that I'm amazed at the power of the YouTube search engine. Yeah. And Instagram has also gotten to the point, the other platforms have gotten to the point where it's very scrolly and very swipey, but as far as, even like, I'm a big fan of Mr. Beast. And
who isn't?
It is. So I went to this Mr. Beast, it was like a 30-person mastermind, maybe like 4 years ago. And Mr. Beast was going to be there. So I was like, I have to go to this to see what he says. For 90 minutes, he talked about thumbnails.
Wow.
The whole presentation was 90 minutes on thumbnails.
Wow.
And he goes, I could tell you various ways in which you can build and grow your channel, but you're missing the point. He goes, we obsess. He's like, we build 20, 30, 40 thumbnails, and once we like a thumbnail, we go build the video and the idea around it. I was like, that is crazy.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of people in the room that said, well, I'm thinking about starting my channel. He goes, don't start your channel. Your goal is to build 100 thumbnails.
Wow.
And he goes, until you build 100 thumbnails, don't make one video. And like, for someone like that, who just got offered $1 billion for his channel, to be able to give that advice, it's insane. Who
just got offered and turned down $1 billion. Yeah. And he's what, 23, 24? Something like
wild.
That? Yeah. That's ridiculous. 100 thumbnails before you even create a single video. That's the whole thing that people don't see.
Yeah.
Right? They see like this young kid YouTuber and just you immediately go to all the reasons why you haven't done anything big, you know what I mean? And so like you have to justify why this kid just got lucky.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just like, no. It's just before anybody else was even aware that YouTube was going to be a thing, this kid was 13 years old obsessing about how to build the perfect thumbnail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like not paying attention in school, just thinking about thumbnails and then video content and then ideas. And that's it. And then every time he made money, he just dumped it directly back into the growth of the channel instead of like, oh, I made 12 grand this month. Let me go buy a car or like, you know what I mean? Like, let me go get a fat payment on something. And he even said, he was on Joe Rogan recently, and I listened to that episode, and he was even saying that like, cause Joe basically was in the position that all of us are in, which is basically like as a 21-year-old kid, I think he's 23, 24 now, but when he started making good money, he was 18, 19, 20, like a young kid. He's like, Joe was amazed that he didn't get sucked into the traps of being a 20-year-old kid with a ton of money and influence. Yeah. He was just like, how did you escape that, basically? And he was just like, I just figured out it didn't really matter to me. Like I did get a car and I did get this and that. And then he said like someone broke into his house and stole a bunch of his stuff. And then he was just like, I just never replaced it after that. It made me realize how much I didn't care for it and didn't want it. And that I just want to keep making awesome videos. So then he just puts like, that freaking Squid Games video. It was like $7.5–8 million to produce a single video or something like that. It was like a full production. Yeah. But he's got 200 million subscribers plus across all of his channels now, so
Well,
how do you
the
knock
crazy
it?
part there is when we are listening to a story like this, how do we learn from that, right?
Yeah.
And I always think about two things. The easiest two ways to upgrade our lives is control your environment and control the people in your environment. Literally, if the easiest way. So if you and I can get ideas on building a new show, I'm like, hey, let's take a walk, let's change the environment, let's recontrol the environment, or let's add Eric to this conversation because now you're controlling the people in the environment. So as soon as you upgrade the environment or upgrade the people in the environment, all the stuff that does not matter falls off the wagon very quickly. Because what people are doing now is they go to social. They watch more videos. They keep swiping, and that does not change your environment or the people in your environment in any way. So if anyone's stuck right now, just say, hey, can I upgrade my environment or can I upgrade the people in my environment?
Yeah, so it's funny you bring that up because there's one like productivity hack that you gave me a while back that I frankly still have not done it yet. But I feel like at any given time, and it's just talking about it right now reminded me of it, and I probably should do it. But you said like anytime I'm stuck and I can't, like I'm stuck on this idea or this concept, you're like, I've actually physically bought a plane ticket from here in Laguna with, where you live. And I've bought a plane ticket to go to Phoenix just because I like moving and that gets my brain moving, and I like writing. Well, the only way to really move and write at the same time effectively for me is to be in an airplane. So you literally buy a plane ticket, just a one day round trip flight to Phoenix and back, just to like write ideas down and get stuff out of your head and like remove mental blocks. And I thought that was something
you would be shocked. I do that so often.
Really?
Because it's a one day, I fly back, just a backpack. I don't have to change my schedule in any way,
right.
which is good. Most people don't know this, but even when I record my podcast, I've gone to solo shows now.
Okay.
And because now I just tell the stories of working with our partner companies.
Yeah.
I only record the shows when I'm driving.
Oh, really?
So I have a really good headset,
Yeah.
and I think about the podcast episode, and I just get a cup of coffee, and I drive until I finish recording the episode, and I turn around and I record the second one back.
That's
so
hilarious.
all my episodes are recorded
on the move,
on the road.
Yeah. That's so good, dude. So listen, I want to talk a little bit about parenting with you because I know this has been one of the most difficult, I think, things for me to tackle in the last couple of years. Is that my son's 3.5 now. My daughter will be 2 in a couple of days, and that by itself is a very difficult thing. Alone on an island, just being a parent is really difficult. But then you couple that with like having a startup, which is basically a more needy version of a baby. You know what I mean? That like affects more people's lives because we have 10 employees and a few contractors, and it's like, well, we have people to take care of, and like this baby has to be fed, so it feeds all the other people that are associated with that one. But I also have these two over here, and then I have my wife, and then we have like there's so many things. I got the podcast, we have another podcast for fun. It's like how do you tie in passion, entrepreneurship, parenting, and actually be able to still be there for your kid and not miss everything?
So I think the first thing is having the awareness like you have, because that's until you state it and understand that it's work, it's a skill that you need to learn. A lot of us learn the skill of parenting and then our kids are gone from the house, right? So it's like I just got good at this and they're gone.
Right.
So with my coach, I talk to my coach 2 to 3 times a month, but with my coach we have one session dedicated to family, essentially parenting, one session dedicated to me and my wife, and one session dedicated to the business.
Okay, so this is like a life coach.
Yeah, so she's a life business coach, and she's great. And the reason is that what we ended up talking about before was whatever was top of mind we would talk about before and work through that. But now we've just themed our calls, realizing that the domains are important and that each of the domains always need upgrades.
Yeah.
And when I know my next upcoming call is the parenting call, which is great. So I know I'm going to level up in that area. So one thing so that alone,
just having the accountability,
just knowing that I've got this dedicated time and the next call, I'm actually going to forcefully think of and talk about that, which is really powerful. She gave me this idea last year, and she said, hey, so my son Neil is 11, my daughter Laura is 6.
Okay.
And she said, you should have each your wife and Sharran, you and your wife should have separate individual projects with each of the kids. So you have individual relationships that you can talk with them about that the rest of the family is not a part of.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, does that feel like it is
uniting?
Uniting or segregating the family? She's like, try it. So the project that I have going on with my son right now, he loves Rubik's Cubes.
Okay.
There are 14 different types of cubes, and he solved every different type of cube by himself.
Wow.
And
by himself,
watching YouTube videos, he's solved them. So he is teaching me how to solve a cube over the next 90 days. And so all we do every single day at night before he goes to bed, we spend 5 minutes, and he teaches me an algorithm, and we have that little bond.
Yeah.
But with my 6-year-old daughter, I didn't have anything like to sink my teeth into.
Sure.
So I was talking to one of my best friends about it, and he was like, hey, my daughter is similar too. We should do something together with our daughters. I said, okay, like what? And so we started talking about it, and my daughter, Laura, who's 6, loves rainbows and unicorns. You're going to get there. I mean, I am not joking, Travis. Everything that we own has a rainbow or a unicorn on it. Everything, right? And so I said, wouldn't it be great to do something which involved rainbows and unicorns? Because I know I can immediately grab her attention.
Yeah.
And as we were talking, I was like, well, what if there was a business we could invest in or buy that was unicorns related? So we did a bunch of research, and last week we closed on a business called 100unicorns.com. It's a online e-commerce store that just sells unicorns products.
That's fantastic.
And we installed a 6-year-old CEO. So my daughter Laura is a 6-year-old CEO.
A 6-year-old CEO. There's a YouTube channel right there, dude.
It is. She loves it so much because the first day when we closed on the business, we pulled up the inventory. I can give you the business plan. Right now, it's a straight up Shopify store with drop shipping. We hired an operator to bolt on Amazon FBA and Walmart, and that process is happening right now. All that Laura and her now, my friend's daughter, do together is they just pick what products they like. So I'm going through the inventory, and she's like, I would never buy that. I like that. Can we do more of that? She's like, can I get that one? So when you know that she says, I want that lamp or I want that sticker, you know that it's a powerful thing.
She's the ideal customer right
100%, right? And so now, last week I actually sent out the first email where it was Laura writing the email. Hey, everybody, this is me, Laura. Parentheses, my dad's writing this because I don't know how to type. Like, it was so cool. And we sent that email out to a small database, and we got purchases. Like, wow. It is so cool. So now my conversations with my daughter is all about 100 unicorns, and we get to talk about it. We have a completely different relationship about it. And she's like, hey, now whatever she sees, she's like, can I get that on the store? So back into the parenting thing, I think having something where you're working on a project with somebody, I think gets you deeper in relationship and rapport with them. Yeah. And now the rest of the family, my wife and my son, are not weirded out by it at all because they're like, oh, Sharran and Laura are working on that. Cool, let them work on that. Yeah. And they feel like it's a part of the overall conversation. So it's no different than me and my wife talking about some plans, or me and my son talking about something else. So I think the individual relationships dramatically increases like love, transparency, rapport, and working on something together. Yeah. So the big lesson for me is, one, could we think about parenting constantly in some regular schedule? And two, if by doing work on it, having a project related to it, feels like you can develop it some more.
Yeah, so if you're a parent and you want to foster entrepreneurship with your kid, then just rewind and go back and listen to that clip a couple of times. You said you did research to find this unicorn business. For somebody who is not in private equity and constantly looking at deals and buying businesses and taking equity in companies and advising, and they're listening to this and they're like, that's an awesome idea, but I have no idea how to even find a business like that or negotiate terms. Like, what would your recommendation to them be? Was this like a marketplace deal? Did you where did you find it, and how did it come about?
Yeah, it came across very randomly through a friend. So it came across very randomly. But if someone knows exactly what they're looking for, my favorite thing is to just ask your network. I mean, you're the build your network guy. Like, literally post on Facebook and say, hey, I'm looking to buy or invest in a pancake house business. Does anybody know any pancake houses around the country? Yeah. Like, you'd be shocked as to how many people can connect the dots for you. And when the ask is so unique and specific, people will share it and want to help you, etc. We have no idea the depth of connections in our network that can find the most strangest of things. So that's number one. There are a couple of websites like flippa.com and things like that are out there. If you just Google how to buying an e-commerce business online, there's a lot of sites out there. My suggestion is if you're thinking about buying a business, you have two options. Number one is at least find an attorney that has done a deal like that can at least guide you through the guideposts around it.
An M&A attorney, essentially.
M&A attorney, and those deals are generally smaller, so you don't need someone fancy, but they just need to have had experience buying the business size that you have had. But I actually like talking to business brokers about this stuff because while business brokers in various niches have gotten weird kind of raps, they know how to find a business, terms of negotiating
Structure
a business.
Deal,
just you need, I think having an advisor on things like this is really good, because otherwise you're writing a check on something that you can't find, etc.
Right.
But I will tell you, man, we are overlooking the fact that many businesses sell today for zero money down.
That's what I was gonna ask about next. Yeah. So explain that. Why is that? Because I think you just blew a bunch of people's minds right now, because they're listening to this and they're like, I can't afford to buy a business. Like Sharran's exited companies. He's got money to play with. I'm working at, whatever, the Walgreens warehouse down the street, loading boxes. Like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
So explain that.
So the interesting part is most businesses in the U.S. are jobs for people.
Yeah.
And the sooner we understand that, the sooner we can understand that buying a business for no money down is just a mindset. There are tons of people out there, the first thought that they have running a HVAC business or a stonemasonry business is they're thinking, okay, I am getting to my 50s, I'm making up numbers.
Yeah.
I'm tired, I'm done. I'm just going to shut it down.
Yeah.
That's what they think. They're just going to shut it down. No, the average business owner does not think that they're going to sell their business in any way.
Right.
So in fact,
and if they do, they probably can't.
They can't and they don't know how.
Yeah.
Right. I have real estate agents they'll work their entire careers in their real estate business and they'll say, I'm done. I'm just going to move to Napa. I go, wait, your income just stopped, right? So you have to work twice as hard in your last 10 years to save up, and then you don't have this big network database that you build. Most businesses can and are very open to selling for zero money down, but it's all about terms. If you get zero money down, you're just telling, at some point, someone is financing the business. Either cash is financing the business, a bank is financing the business, or Travis, the owner, is financing the business.
Yeah.
All we need to think about is, at some point, someone is financing the business. It doesn't have to be cash. It doesn't have to be the bank. It can be Travis, the seller, and we call it seller financing.
Yeah.
Most of the times what sellers want is they'll say, hey, Sharran, I've been doing this business for a while, like 100unicorns.com. I've not put a lot of effort into it. You guys are going to market it. You guys are going to write emails. You're going to get at Amazon FBA and all of that. Awesome. How about for the next 24 months, pay me $5,000 a month? And if they do that, and they're out.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of times the business will be making the amount that they're asking for.
Correct.
So it's like,
you just pay them out of cash flow. Yeah.
Right.
And people will ask, well, why would they walk away from the cash flow? Well, very simply is they're delivering their time to now, and we take over that, but we're committed to paying them that.
Yeah.
I'll give you a great story. Jason Chappell and I, wanted to buy. He has a marketing agency, and he wanted a front-facing Instagram page to drive more traffic to the marketing agency. And I was like, well, let's go buy a page. And he goes, I have 4 pages picked out that I would really like. I go, okay. So I just DM'd the page owners directly. And I said, hey, would you be open to something like this? Like, I've never thought about this. Let's talk about it. Travis, we didn't even get on the phone. We did this whole conversation on Telegram, right? And then the don't know who this person is. This person was in the UK. We did the whole transaction in 37 minutes using Bitcoin. We bought the business with like 30, 40 grand of Bitcoin down.
Yeah.
And we had a third-party escrow. The guy came into the Telegram chat, actually negotiated the contract for us, which I didn't know that you had third-party Telegram escrow.
Yeah.
We had never even met the seller. Handed over the credentials to us, released the monies to him or her. I don't even know if it's a girl or boy. Released the monies to him or her. And then we pay them over time as the page generates revenue. So we bought a business in 37 minutes using Bitcoin. So I just wired from wallet to wallet. Like I did a wallet-to-wallet transfer. So you can buy stuff. I would actually say, just assume that almost all businesses are available for sale for zero money down.
Yeah. I feel like I was talking to somebody about this recently. I was like, in the next few years, I really want to increase the number of like businesses that I bring on that are they're just producers.
Yeah.
There's so many like people think. At least I used to think this way. I used to think that like if I'm going to be a successful business owner, I have to invent the next Facebook. Like I have to come up with Angry Birds. I have to do something. Like I have to be an inventor, an innovator. I got to do Tesla. I have to build something huge and amazing. It's like you don't realize that like in your town, wherever you live, there's a bunch of boomers that are getting ready to retire.
Yep.
And this recession is going to hit a lot of people really hard. And the people who've been working with this chain of 3 laundromats for the last 25, 30 years in their local area and have been busting their tail for that long working on these laundromats, they want to be done.
Yes.
And if they're the only one running it, then there's no structure in place. They're not going to be able to have a big exit or acquisition. They're just looking at it, like you said, as like, well, I guess we're just going to shut down.
It actually costs them money to close the business, so they keep it running and be resentful about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then they have to keep working it because nobody else is going to. So I think in the next, like to your point, the next 2 to 3 years, as the recession gets worse and worse over the really the next 8 quarters, I think there's going to be it's going to be ripe with opportunity with people who are just like, look, I'm done. Please take this off of my hands, and whatever, I'm open to whatever you want to talk about.
Dude, I will tell you the craziest story. My friend is a real estate agent in Chicago. He helped this Korean family sell their family home in a normal real estate transaction. In the transaction, that the family, the husband and wife, older couple, took such a liking to my friend. They said, hey, I'd love for you to show you our business and our warehouse. And so he's like, of course. So he goes and shows them so they are in they import T-shirts. And the couple is telling him the story, saying, we've been looking for somebody to give this business to. We will give this to you. We will give you this business. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory. We will give you the inventory, as in you don't have to pay for it. As in when you sell it, you can pay us back for the inventory. We will stay on for the next 12 months and teach you how to run this.
Wow.
For zero money out of pocket.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was just because this couple saw something they loved about, like a son in my friend.
Yeah.
And they offered him the business, the money,
and the education.
And the education to do it.
Right.
So like, what a risk-free, this is like, and my friend was like, does this happen often? I go, when you put yourself in situations and you're open to this, it totally does. Yeah,
so there's so much M&A activity going on right now, and I think it's going to, like I said, I think there's going to be a ton of consolidation that happens over the next couple of years, and I think that's historically proven in recessions. People that shouldn't be in business get out of business, and they look for other opportunities, and they just want to be done, or there's a lot of potential for acqui-hires and bringing people into the company. But there's also been a couple of really big things happening in that space recently that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on as a private equity guy. Elon and Twitter. What's your take?
Dude, someone had to do something, right? If you take politics aside, whether it's Elon or not, he has shown, from a track record perspective, that he can build a great business.
Yeah.
Simultaneously doing other things. So he and the funny part is, like, there's a recent memo about, hey, you guys need to step it into high gear to build Twitter 2.0. What else do you expect? Right. Like now it's a bad
it's
thing.
It's demonized. Yeah, right.
I'm like, he's showing up and saying, hey, I bought this business. I have a different vision for it.
Right.
Like, we're going to bust it.
Get on board or don't.
Yeah.
Either way, fine. But if you're staying, stay.
Right.
And let's build something.
And he said, and he was very generous. He's like, for those are in, they're in, and those are out, I'll happily pay you whatever severance you want to go. We're building a new business.
And it was higher than average, like higher than normal
3 months
severance.
or something of severance, right?
Yeah.
Which he does not have to offer anybody.
Right.
And so I have 2 kind of big questions, kind of thoughts around this. Number one is, I don't know his strange alien intentions. Like, Elon's not human, right? Like, you can do what you do, but I don't know his kind of broader intentions. But I do appreciate the fact that he sees that he can do different things.
Yeah.
Even the whole blue check and pay for it, etc.
Yeah.
As a business person, I don't mind it because he's experimenting.
Right.
And suddenly now that caused a lot of pain where it backfired.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You put it out there. You learn. Do something different with it, as opposed to the opposite of not doing anything with it. So
it was immediate action.
Exactly.
And then that's the thing about guys like him that people don't understand is, like, you can sit there and criticize him all day long, but people like that don't wait for a panel of experts to give them their opinion, because the only real feedback they're going to get is the real-time feedback of taking action and seeing a result, getting that feedback, and then going, let's alter course and change direction.
100%.
But if you just sit there going, like, I wonder what we should do for 6 months, and you're losing $3 million a day or whatever they were losing, it's like, that's how you go bankrupt.
Well, I think you mentioned something that's so cool. the best entrepreneurs that I know. And so the one of the three criteria that we look for in the founders that we invest in are, impeccable character from an integrity perspective.
Yep.
We call it reflective awareness. They're coachable. And the third is, this one is supercharged ambition. If I can't see supercharged ambition, I'm out. Because I'm a minority partner plugging and supporting someone's supercharged ambition. And I think the resulting force of someone's supercharged ambition is their ability to obsess over getting something done so fast. Elon had an idea. He said, we're going to do it. 3 days after they did it, they actually built. Like, that is crazy from an execution perspective.
Especially in a company of that size.
Totally.
To be able to move that quickly is unprecedented.
And it's not adding a different like button, right? This is a fundamental product change
of the business model.
It's crazy, right? So I respect the fact that he's moving fast, and I think when you do that, you will get a better platform.
Right.
You go from not doing great to more regulation to something in the middle, which is better. The second thing that I'm ultra curious about, which a lot of people had thoughts around, is, well, how did he buy it?
Yeah.
And there was so much poo-pooing around, like, hey, he pledged his Tesla stock to do this, and he borrowed money. I'm like, yes.
Which action are we demonizing here? This is how deals get done.
Right. And so I always go back to financing. Right? Somebody has to finance something.
Right.
You either use cash to finance something, some form of bank loan in some way to finance something, or the seller takes a note and you finance it another way, right? Zero money down. Some form of it. Well, all that Elon did was, instead of writing a check with cash, he said, I have all this Tesla stock. Merrill Lynch or whoever was willing to lend him money on it, and he did it. In fact, he is on the hook for all the stock movement. Right. He has to pay a fee on all of that. Like, if you and I had the stock, we would do the same thing. But I actually think you and I can do the same thing, which is, that's what we call a home equity line of credit. Right. So if you had another $20,000 available, you can borrow it. No one asks you what it is. Right. And then you can take
loans against your IRA. You can take loans against 401k. You can take loans against your stock portfolio.
That is exactly
as a regular person. You don't have to have, $200 billion net worth to take loans against your stock.
That is exactly
It happens all the time.
And that's the flip that I want to I've been sharing with our founders is, it is not about cash for a rainy day. It is about always knowing you have access to cash. And I think that's a big difference. So several of my friends, I'm a big fan of this idea of infinite banking, which is using life insurance policies, whole life policies as a container for holding on to wealth and transferring wealth. But the idea there is, you shove more money into a life insurance policy, but it is your bank. It is your bank. You're your own banker now. You can borrow from your policy. When I borrow from my policy, I just tell the insurance company how much to send and when. Yeah. There's no question around anything. I can just borrow from my policy.
Let me see your income statement.
There's none of that, right? And so if we can flip our mindsets to, I don't need to be sitting on cash. And I always tell a lot of our founders, you're sitting on, pick a number, $500,000 of cash. That is lazy cash. You're doing that just because you have this feeling of security that you need 500 grand. It may not solve any reason, but it's lazy cash. It's not the cash that's the problem, it's the access to cash. And I think what Elon solved was, he goes, yes, I could write a check. I could go take my Tesla stock, liquidate it, pay taxes on all of that, and then write the check to buy Twitter. Or I can just borrow against it in a completely tax-efficient transaction. So he flipped the difference between having cash and access to cash. And I think that's what I want people to learn is, access to cash is the flex. Cash is not the flex.
Sure. Right. I mean, zero wealthy people I know are just sitting on a bunch of piles and piles of cash, like Scrooge McDuck. You know what I'm saying? They're like, that's not happening. It's they all have it invested. It was funny, a buddy of mine. I don't know if you know Chris Nagel. His whole business is preaching the whole life infinite banking concept. And that was one thing that he brought up, was about the whole FTX crash that happened. And he was talking about that and was just like, if these investors had their money in FTX, but had not actually had their money in FTX, but had it in a whole life policy and took the loan against it and put it in FTX, they'd be sitting in a much different position. And on that note, I'm curious to hear, from like, there's a lot of people that are hearing a bunch of stuff about, Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and this whole crash and this, fraud investigation and, the mini Madoff as they're calling them and stuff. Can you like break it down so a layman that doesn't understand any of this stuff, that doesn't really, has not dabbled in this world, can you break down what happened with FTX?
Yeah. So the interesting part, if you actually completely zoom out, instead of thinking about FTX, anything crypto related, the easiest way is to think about it as the NASDAQ or the stock market.
Okay.
So thing that we already know, my favorite way of trying to understand a concept is, hey, what is this like? And in a lot of ways, it's just like a stock market exchange. What does a stock market do? The stock market is like a NASDAQ, is a market maker. They bring buyers and sellers together. Now, it generally works because there are some buyers and some sellers, and the stock market kind of brings the match together, and their job is to bridge and make the market. Sometimes, if there's crazy news in the economy, there's terrorist attack, etc., they stop trading in all exchanges. There's a reason for that, because you can't make the market anymore. There's a mismatch between the number of sellers of the stock or the market and the number of buyers. So there's what they call, there's not enough liquidity to manage the transaction. When the market's in balance, everyone's okay. And crazy events put things out of balance. And when you don't have, but our stock markets are so mature that they know how to halt trading. They know how to pause things. They have regulatory stuff. While I'm a free market capitalist, some form of regulation is good for things like this, because you don't see stuff just breaking, right? And the reason why a FTX is like in the Bahamas or in the Caymans or wherever it was, I can't remember exactly, but they were not able to short circuit the buys and the sells, and so it starts to break down, right? And for me, it's like, well, why? Why did that happen? Because there's not enough like baseline, borderline regulation around it, and it's just not mature enough.
Yeah.
So in a very base level, we have to allow, like, this crypto economy, even though it's been around for a little bit, I'm sorry, it's young. It is so young. The average person doesn't even know what Pancake Swap is, right? And I can't believe I know what it is, because but most people are like, I'm going to go buy Bitcoin on Coinbase. Like, that is their kind of exposure to all of this.
Yeah.
But knowing that as the exposure to this asset class grows, we need a little bit of regulation to ensure that markets work and stay in balance. Otherwise, you're going to have crashes in exchanges.
Yeah.
And to me, that's when I don't know all the details around what happened to him or whether he did the mini Madoff, etc. But what I am concerned about is, how can we use the learning of this to saying, hey, this happened, a bunch of people got affected. Can we put mini regulation in place so that this doesn't happen again? But I think the next iteration of this, I feel terrible that some people really struggle financially on this one, but that's a big learning, because if that did not happen, we would not have the courage to build the next better FTX. Yeah,
definitely. I think a lot of people learned a lesson the hard way, and unfortunately, and without the hard part about it is, like, there's probably a lot of really, really smart people that lost a lot of money on it too.
Of course.
I mean, including all the people that invested in the last round. I mean, they raised a massive round. You know what I mean? And then it turns out he was just spending the money himself and doing whatever he wanted to do, donating to political campaigns, and not actually using the money to. But
even fundamentally, that goes back like a Google can't do that, right?
Yeah, right.
And so the built-in,
there's a board, there's even inside of the company, there's company governance, and there's checks and balances in the company, not even in like the industry.
Right.
So like, this was a weird situation where the industry is not regulated very well.
Correct.
And the company was also not regulated very well. There's like 3 people controlling a company that's worth what, 20 billion or something like that.
Dude, I know this could be a strange conversation. Whenever I think of stuff like this, I immediately think of, what else is it like? Yeah. So I have several contacts here in the state of California where cannabis is legal, right? Just the recreational cannabis, and there was a huge cannabis industry. And how it started off originally was the whole marijuana trade was the fact that Can we talk about this? Is this okay? All right.
Of course.
It was all black market. It was not allowed. It was completely illegal. So buyers and sellers of they call it flour. Buyers and sellers of flour, if they ever reneged on a trade, they'd get shot. right? Like they would die.
There's some regulation for you. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And then when this halfway regulation came in, they call it the gray market. So it's not completely, white, but it's the gray market. Now what's happening is there's no, now it's somewhat regulated.
Yeah.
And they have one governing body, they have taxes, etc. But now I actually have buyers and sellers of cannabis that I talk to. They're like, no one cares anymore because lead, as in the gun, was the regulatory governance tool. Now it's not. So in the last 6 to 12 months, cannabis pricing has plummeted in California because everyone's like, what are you going to do, shoot me? And what's interesting is that market around the country from a state-by-state perspective or whatever is going through some structural changes. Until we get those structural changes, we're not going to be able to see that business flourish in some way because the average public person utilizing the service or investing in it has no confidence, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big issue. So
so the lesson is go buy weed in California.
But what I had no idea, but what I learned was that when he told me, he goes, governance was by the gun. I was like, now I get it.
Makes total sense. Yeah, right. Well, listen, dude, I don't want to keep you here forever. I know you got a family, you got businesses to run and everything like that. Before we take off, where do you want people to go connect with you a little bit more?
So if I started this private podcast, which has been...
I'm a subscriber.
Yeah,
so plug away.
It's been super cool because I didn't know how to get quick ideas and lessons from my head out to our partner companies.
Yeah.
And so it's called 10K Wisdom. And the idea is, how do I get 10 minutes worth of knowledge out, everything under 10 minutes, no intro, no outro, just 10 minutes worth of raw, real knowledge out to folks. And I originally built it for our partner companies only because I would come out of a meeting with Travis and I'd say, I have this idea. I would record it really quick. I would upload on the podcast and it would be super simple and private. And one of my partners said to me, he goes, dude, you're already recording this. Why don't you just give this to the world? This makes no sense that you're holding this back. So recently we opened it up. It is still private, but you can get the access to the feed. It's 10kwisdom.com, 10kwisdom.com, totally free. So if you like this show with Travis, I know you'll like that too.
Absolutely, yeah. If there's anybody, there's a few people that I tell people in my circles, bro. I was just like, there's a few like super underrated entrepreneurs that everybody should follow, and Sharran is definitely one of them. If you're listening to this and you don't know who this guy is and you are in business, you're doing yourself a disservice by not listening to some of the stuff that he's putting out there. Especially if you're an operator or a CEO. Like I was not a CEO before I started this company. You know what I mean? I was just like a solopreneur. I was just a hustler, a sales guy, a podcaster. I wasn't any of that. And so there was a steep learning curve for me. And one of the number one resources that I always linked back to was 10K Wisdom. So I appreciate you for coming on. If you're listening to this right now, go to 10kwisdom.com and subscribe over to Sharran's private podcast over there. And I know that you'll come away with some awesome lessons. So, dude, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.